Okay, guys, welcome back. As you can see here, I have created a pseudo arm, and I'm just gonna show you how to I'm just gonna quickly finish this rig. I wanted to show you a little trick you could use for your pole vector constraints, as well as we're gonna go over the animation layers before we go into the newer stuff. Because to be fair, these animation layers here. This is the older version. This is like the legacy stuff, and not to mention that Maya LT only supports 2 animation layers, opposite to, of course, the unlimited amount in regular Maya. But I suspect you will be using the LT version due to financial limitations. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just hook this up really quick. Now, obviously, my outliner is a little bit of a mess here. I mean, I've got, I never bothered naming any of these because this is just an example, but this is a bad habit to get into anyway. Okay, so here I've got my IK handle, and basically what I'm going to do is grab it and constrain it to a pole vector. Oh, it is, I already constrained it. That's nice, that's nice. So if I go ahead and move this, this should move as well. Yeah, it's rotated. So my pole vector is already constrained. However, notice that the reason I wanted to show you this is because if I start moving this, the pole vector will not be going with the actual arm. It only obviously, I mean, it will still work, but it's not going to follow your geometry. And if you have, you know, a bunch of stuff in the scene, you might lose your things. And unfortunately, parenting is not going to be working out for you too well due to the simple fact that um, you know, parenting is going to be sending values over here, so it's going to inherit whatever movement is going to get. So let me just show you. Let's say I grab the child and I grab the parent here, and I parent this. And in this situation, what's going to happen is if I start moving this, first of all, the object is going to move, but it will probably go over the pole vector. And since this is a pole vector constraint, I'm going to get a flip, like so. Now that you might think that this is fine and all, but notice what happens here. Like, this is not what you want when you're animating, okay? And second of all, hands don't go in this direction, even though you could do it, and you know, if someone's hand gets broken or something. But in most situations, this will be an issue. Okay, so parenting is not an option. Our other option, of course, is to go ahead and use a constraint, which is what I'm going to do. And since obviously Maya is recognizing the constraint only on the y-axis over here, what's going to happen is I'm going to basically constrain it to the elbow joint. So I'm going to grab the elbow joint as being the master, and I'm going to grab the slave, and I'm going to constrain it to a point. And over here, I'm basically not going to use the y. So I'm just going to use X and Z. I did this before, but I figured I might as well just tell you about this because it's a very fast way to set it up, and it doesn't take a lot of time and very rarely gets in the way. So if I add this right now, because I'm not affecting the y-axis, even though I move this object, it's not going to be getting in the way that much. And because it's following, because it's not the elbow, it's not the controller here, but the actual joint, it will also maintain a proper distance. Now, obviously, you could still, in some extreme situations, get this flip over here. But you know, it's far less evident in this situation. Okay, so it is definitely possible. Now, maybe there are other and better ways to do this, of which I am not aware. For some reason, the undo bit is a little bit slow on the uptick, but you know, it gets the job done, sort of. Okay, so it's not a big deal. Obviously, if you're not a big fan of this, you could obviously ignore it. Another option would be to have an aim constraint so that it's sort of always pointing towards the object here. Although this does not really affect its positioning in any way, so you know, that's entirely up to you. I think there's a problem here with the update. It doesn't get updated on time. I remember there was a problem that I had to fix before on an earlier version. I just don't remember the fix. You could probably Google it. But basically what happens is when you undo, it's not automatically re-rendered, so you need to make an update so that it comes back. I'm not sure which way it was. I believe it may have been in the viewport options here. Let me just see here, options, viewport 2.0. I think this thing was, oh, this, by the way, this vertex caching is very nice if you have a lot of, like a very high poly model, but I'm not going to talk about that now. Let me just see here real quick. Do we have anything? No. For some reason, I thought there was a way to update per frame basis, but then again, because this isn't really like a real-time rendering thing, I mean, it only renders per frame, you get this. Sometimes it happens. Anyway, we have our little arm here, and I've turned off the grid on purpose because I just wanted to show you something real fast. Now I'm going to key an animation really quickly, but before I do that, I'm probably going to go over here and say, see, I'm not too sure. Basically, what I wanted to change last time, remember when I wanted to say, well, I'm only going to change the things over here. Actually, let's use the auto key option right now. So key number 0, we need to set this key manually. So I'm going to press S over here. So this key is set. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to frame number 30, and we're going to basically bend our hand just like so. Nothing fancy, right? I mean, obviously, you could go ahead and rotate some stuff, but this is not really going to affect much. So I'm keying this, and as you can see, only the things that have been changed are keyed in. That's why the auto key is very nice, because it's not going to key everything. It's only going to key the stuff that's been changed. But let's just put it like that and turn this off and just play this animation. So currently, you know, it's not something very impressive. It's fairly simple animation. But the reason I wanted to talk to you about the layers here is because if we go ahead and create a layer right now, you will notice that we currently have a base animation. This is like a standard layer. It's like the background in Photoshop, but it's basically always available to you. There's a couple of options where you can ghost layers, etc. But essentially, this is pretty much the same thing as the Photoshop layers. So if I go ahead and add the selected object to the second animation layer, notice it's going to turn green. I can basically create a new one. Now currently it's set to the additive mode. So if I play the animation, I will still have this, but let's say at frame number 15, I could go ahead, and this is where my hand will be. I could say that for animation number, layer number, whatever, this bit here, we're gonna basically add this motion to it. So we could say maybe we could go over here. I should probably auto key this, by the way. And then at frame 30, we're gonna be extending ourselves in a punch type deal. So this is automatically keyed in, and let's see what we've done. See, currently, obviously there's a little bit of an issue here, some jiggling because of the slow update. But what I wanted to show you is the fact that you can blend these two animations together very easily. That's how it used to be done anyway. You get the two animations, and you can blend between them. Now, obviously, there's other ways you could do this. You could say maybe, in this case, you could say a 0 key. So this allows you to, for this layer, basically, layer number 15 is going to be layer number 0 if I zero this out right now. And then like at layer number 30, sorry, at frame number 30, I would zero this out again, and this would be the end of that. But what I wanted to really show you here, I'm just going to undo these. What I really wanted to show you here is the fact that you could create something a lot cooler, and that is, if we go ahead and change the mode to override, this allows you to basically ignore all the animation beforehand, which means that you can, this is, by the way, the animation that we had. And you could see this, by the way, by isolating a layer, by soloing it, you see all the what animation you have made. And obviously you got a different weight over here at the bottom right, how much you can actually change the weights. And you can keyframe this as well on a particular, like on the base animation layer. And that is a perfectly valid and legit way to work. But obviously there's a better way, I believe a far more flexible way of doing things. So this is probably going to be deprecated, and only the hardcore people that have used this before will keep using it. But what I wanted to tell you about this possible use of these layers is if you have many animation sets, and let's say, okay, so in my first layer, if I disable this for a second, in my first layer I have a guy who bends his arm, and then I want in the second layer to have like an entirely different type of animation, which would be, sorry, I need to go to the second layer and then disable this, which would be if I grab this key over here and just move it, right, grab this key and move it to frame number 1, and then frame number 30 would be my punch, so I could grab this key and move it to frame 50 and say, okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and grab this guy, use the auto key and move him over here. So this would be the punch bit, right? And then over here, this would be the lifting bit, right? So I have this motion over here, and then in frame number 30 I want to go back down, so this would be something like this. No, like this. Okay, so now I have a punching animation. Now obviously this isn't a complete punch and it looks pretty crap, but this is the beginnings of something. We can start adding different motions to it. So at frame number 15, maybe we could say, all right, well, we're gonna grab this as well. And because, by the way, it's not added to this animation set, we need to go ahead and add the selected object. Otherwise we'll be animating on the base layer here. And let's say we want this to go ahead, this guy has to go ahead and twist his arm. So we need to zero this out though. So go ahead and at frame number 0, if this was updating correctly, which for some reason it isn't. What happens if I play this? Oh, because we're overriding this and this isn't keyframed, yes. Okay, so let's say I grab this guy, and currently I'm at keyframe 0. So I'm gonna just put this at, just use S to keyframe this. By the way, notice that the color is different here. You can, I believe you could change the color of this, of these, what's its face, of these layers from, let me just see here. I believe there was a way to change the color of these pips over here from red to whatever it is. I'm just not too sure. And you can export, by the way, the animation of this layer into like a new type deal, and then you can re-import it into another like some other stuff. But anyway, let me just go ahead and let's key this in because we're losing time. So I'm keying this into at frame number 1, and then at frame number 15 I want this guy to rotate his hand. The auto key is still on, so this should set a key. And then at frame number 30 I want this to be back at 0. What's the story here now? I believe I've created a problem. Yeah, see, I told you this was not like the best solution, but let's go ahead and see what we've done. Yeah, so we do have sort of a kind of this punching motion, which, you know, I mean, it's not perfect, but, you know, you could get the job done, I'd say. Let's go ahead and select this guy, frame number, let's select this guy over here and go to frame number 1 over here. It shouldn't be over here, right, like that. Yeah, this is more like it. And this is where he is going to extend his arm. We could probably rotate a little bit more. So some kind of like a big punch. And the same frame, grab this thing as well and maybe give it a more of a hooking motion so that it would be something like a hook. We still need to move this a little bit more to the side. Lifting it up and down as well is also going to work in a situation where you're past the pole vector bit. So like I said, you see that's where your problem usually arises, where your controller for your pole vector is so far away that you might have to you might have to actually go ahead and hunt for it in your scene. Okay, but anyway, this is my frame number 15. So we've got this guy giving it a hook type deal, but then again, this is just a basic animation, so maybe I needed to go ahead and frame number 15 put it over here, something like this, right, so that it goes back. Yeah, but then again at frame 30 this thing should be back as well. So let's put it right back where it was. Oops, not this side. Grab it like that, and then this thing should stay at 0. It already is 0. Okay, see, that's because we don't have a grid now. I really have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah, so we had to go back with this after the hook and go back over here at frame number 30. So let's see what we've done. Yeah, this is a ridiculously, this is more of a, this doesn't even count as a hook, but whatever. You get the point, I hope, that how to basically use these layers. And like I said, you can blend between them instead of just overriding them. So remember that we still have our first animation layer. So if we disable this, we play our regular animation, it's just lifting the hand up. Okay, so there's nothing, you know, it's not a destructive way of working. Now, that being said, let's just go ahead and export this animation, this one, right? If we go ahead and just use this punching thing. Actually, I think I made it worse somehow. I'm not too sure how that happened, but this was really a bad idea. Maybe I should just keep it like that. Yeah. Well, this sort of looks like a punch. Maybe I need more frames, you know, to drive it all the way to the side like a proper hook, but whatever. Just leave it at that. Okay, so what we could do is export our animation here from this layer. So let's just go ahead and say export layer, and we're going to call this, I'm just going to leave it here in the scenes. Although, you know, Maya does have all these fancy things over here like source images, sounds, etc. But you know, whatever it is, we could export the whole layer here if you wanted to. Okay, and you could save it to an FBX, for example, if you want it, and then you can re-import it somewhere else. Obviously, you know, it depends on what you do. Okay, so I'm just gonna say, right, I'm gonna FBX export this thing if I name it correctly, and I say this is my hook punch animation, and I'm gonna save this in the data, or yeah, just save it in the data folder. So you've got all these exports which failed, but it's fine for us. Export constraints, export. Oh yeah, we need to bake the animation, my bad. Obviously, before you do that, you have to bake the animation, which is basically going to create a bunch of keyframes for you. So, you know, you could basically grab this and bake it. But I'm not going to do that right now. I just wanted to show you that it is possible. What I want to do, though, is talk about the time editor, because this is like the next, the newer version, and it has a lot of common ground with the Unreal Editor. The Unreal Editor animation captures and montages and all them jazzes, because they're pretty much identical in terms of workflow. Well, not identical, but they have a lot in common. Okay. Anyway, that's it from me, guys. I'm gonna basically, I'm not even gonna save this right now because I don't want this animation as it is, and I really don't like using this layer-based workflow anyway. So I'll see you guys in the next video where we go through the graph editor. All right. See ya. Bye-bye.